The arrogant red belt champion stood over the boy whose leg had just shattered, a cruel smirk plastered on his face. The sickening crack had silenced the entire Fight Club, turning cheers into gasps of horror. He raised his arms, basking in the fear he'd created. But then, a shadow detached itself from the back wall. Before I tell you who that man was and what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The air inside the crucible was thick with the smell of sweat, rust, and cheap beer. The crucible wasn't a dojo. It was a testament to raw, unfiltered combat. Housed in a cavernous, abandoned warehouse on the industrial outskirts of the city, it was a place where honor was a foreign word and victory was the only language spoken. Chains held up a makeshift boxing ring, its canvas floor stained with the history of countless brutal bouts. Exposed pipes dripped condensation onto the concrete floor, and harsh industrial lights cast long, dancing shadows, making the cheering crowd look like a legion of specters hungry for violence. This was the final match of the Under-21 Invitational, and the main event was about to reach its bloody conclusion. In one corner, preening under the spotlight, was Damian Blaze Rocco. At 22, he was the undisputed king of the Crucible. His red belt was a mark of his skill, but his reputation was built on pure sadism. He wore flashy shorts covered in logos from local pawn shops and vape stores, his muscles gleaming with oil. His hair was slicked back, and a tattoo of a coiled serpent snaked up his neck. He didn't just defeat his opponents. He dismantled them, piece by piece, savoring their humiliation. He moved with a predatory swagger, feeding off the crowd's energy, his eyes scanning the faces for fear and finding it everywhere. In the opposite corner stood Leo. He was 17, lean and wiry, with a quiet intensity that seemed out of place in this chaotic arena. He wore simple black compression shorts and a tight-fitting gray rash guard. No sponsors, no flash, nothing but focus in his dark eyes. He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, his breathing steady, trying to block out the noise and the oppressive atmosphere. To the baying crowd, he looked like a lamb being led to slaughter. A few jeers and mocking whistles were thrown his way. Damian saw him and chuckled a low, guttural sound. "You sure you're in the right place, kid? The high school wrestling team meets on Tuesdays." Leo didn't respond. He simply offered a respectful nod. Damian spat on the canvas in reply. The referee, a scarred man with a cauliflower ear and a bored expression, droned through the rules no one cared about and then yelled, "Fight!" Damian exploded from his corner. He was a whirlwind of motion, a flurry of high kicks and aggressive hooks designed to intimidate and overwhelm. But Leo was surprisingly resilient. He weathered the initial storm, his defense tight and efficient. He moved with a calm precision that frustrated Damian, ducking under wild swings and blocking powerful kicks. He even managed to land a clean, sharp jab that snapped Damian's head back, drawing a collective "oh" from the surprised crowd. The strike did no real damage, but it was an insult, and Damian Rocco did not tolerate insults. The smirk vanished from Damian's face, replaced by a mask of cold fury. The games were over. He changed his strategy, becoming more calculated. He began to target Leo's lead leg with vicious, chopping low kicks. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Each one landed with sickening force. Leo gritted his teeth, his leg beginning to buckle, but he refused to go down. He tried to counter, but Damian was too strong, too relentless. He backed Leo into the chains, unleashing a barrage of elbows and punches that left the boy reeling. Then, Damian saw his opening. As Leo stumbled, off balance, Damian ducked low, grabbing Leo's battered leg. Leo tried to pull away, but Damian's grip was like iron. He twisted, applying pressure to the knee. This was an illegal reaping throw, designed not to score points, but to cripple. The referee shouted a warning, but it was too late. Damian leaned in close, his voice a venomous whisper in Leo's ear. Time to learn how to crawl. With a final brutal wrench, he put his full weight into the lock. A horrifyingly loud, wet crack echoed through the warehouse. It was a sound of splintering bone. Leo's scream was raw and animalistic, swallowed by the sudden, deafening silence of the crowd. He collapsed to the canvas, clutching his leg, which now bent at a sickening, unnatural angle just below the knee. The fight was over. The violence had reached its crescendo, leaving behind a wake of pure shock. The bloodlust that had filled the air moments before evaporated, replaced by a cold, shared horror. Even for the hardened regulars of the Crucible, this was too much. The referee, his face pale, immediately waved his arms, calling for the medics stationed ringside. Damien Rocco, however, was ecstatic. He rose to his feet, a triumphant, demonic grin spreading across his face. He spat on the mat near Leo's writhing body and raised his arms to the silent crowd, soaking in their stunned fear as if it were applause. "That's what happens when you step into my world," he roared, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. He thought he was a warrior. "He's just another broken toy. This is my house." He pounded his chest, a picture of unchecked arrogance and brutality. He expected cheers, or at least a grudging respect for his dominance. He got neither. There was only a heavy, judgmental quiet. Then, a voice cut through the tension. It wasn't loud, but it carried an impossible weight, a low, calm thunder that seemed to make the very air vibrate. "The only thing you broke was the code of a warrior." Every head in the warehouse swiveled towards the source of the voice. At the far edge of the room, near the shadows of a loading bay door, a tall, broad figure stepped into the light. He was older, perhaps 60, with a formidable presence that commanded immediate attention. He wore a simple black tactical jacket over a dark Henley shirt, his hair pulled back into a small, tight ponytail. A neatly trimmed, graying beard framed a face that was etched with the kind of hard-won calm that only comes from a lifetime of conflict. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried grace, his eyes, sharp and piercing, locked directly onto Damien Rocco. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd as people began to recognize him. Phones, which had been lowered in shock, were now being raised again, but this time with a sense of frantic disbelief. "No way is that. It's Seagal. That's Steven Seagal. What the hell is he doing here?" On the mat, Leo, his face a mask of agony, looked up. Through his pain-filled eyes, a flicker of hope and recognition dawned. The crowd didn't know, Damien didn't know, but this wasn't just a random celebrity sighting. The Predator had just made a fatal, life-altering mistake. Damien's arrogant expression faltered for a second, replaced by confusion, then dawning recognition, and finally, a sneering derision. Well, he laughed, trying to reclaim control of the room. "Look what we have here. A movie star. Come and see a real fight." He gestured dismissively towards the medics, now carefully fitting a brace onto Leo's shattered leg. "Were you his grandpa?" Steven Seagal didn't answer. He continued his slow, methodical walk towards the ring, his gaze never leaving Damien. Each step was measured, filled with a palpable, controlled energy that was far more intimidating than Damien's explosive rage. The crowd parted for him like the sea, a mixture of awe and fear on their faces. "I'll tell you what, old man," Damien continued, his voice dripping with condescension as Seagal reached the edge of the ring. "If you're his coach or his daddy, maybe you want to step in here too. Show me how they did it in the 80s before you start collecting Social Security." Seagal placed one hand on the top chain, his eyes level with Damien's. The 20-foot distance between them felt charged with electricity. For the first time, he spoke again, his voice still quiet, yet every single person heard it clearly. "You laid your hands on my son." The declaration hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "My son." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place for everyone in the warehouse. This wasn't a celebrity stunt. It was personal. Damien Rocco's sneer faltered for a half-second before returning, more defiant than ever. He was cornered, and like a cornered animal, he lashed out. "And I'd do it again," he spat. "What are you gonna do? Lecture me to death? This isn't a movie set, old-timer. There are no stunt doubles here." Steven Seagal swung one leg over the top chain and stepped into the ring. He moved with the fluid economy of a lifelong martial artist, his body a finely tuned instrument of control. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He unzipped his black jacket, folded it with deliberate care, and handed it to the stunned referee without even looking at him. Underneath, a plain dark t-shirt stretched over a frame that was thicker and more solid than his film role suggested. A body built not for show, but for impact. "Then let's begin," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. The crowd held its collective breath. This was surreal. The line between fiction and reality had just been violently erased. Damien, fueled by adrenaline and ego, saw only an aging actor, a relic from a bygone era. He let out a primal yell and charged forward, throwing a haymaker right hand that had knocked out men half his age. It was a wild, powerful punch meant to end the confrontation before it began. But it hit nothing but air. Seagal hadn't retreated. He hadn't even flinched. He had simply shifted his weight, rotating his body a mere few inches. The punch sailed harmlessly past his head, throwing Damien completely off balance. Before the red belt could even process the miss, Seagal's hand moved. It wasn't a punch. It was a precise, targeted strike, an open palm that connected with a nerve cluster on Damien's neck. A jolt, like a cattle prod, shot through Damien's body. His arm went numb, and he stumbled back, a look of shocked confusion on his face. "You're too loud," Seagal stated, advancing slowly. Too much wasted energy. Enraged and humiliated, Damien charged again, this time launching a furious combination of kicks and punches. It was the same relentless assault that had overwhelmed Leo. But against Seagal, it was like throwing stones against a mountain. Seagal moved just enough to let each strike pass by, his hands a blur as he parried, redirected, and deflected Damien's limbs, turning the younger man's own force against him. He made Damien look clumsy, like a child swinging wildly at a ghost. Frustration boiling over, Damien threw a spinning back kick. It was fast and powerful, but Seagal saw it coming a mile away. As Damien's leg came around, Seagal stepped into the rotation, catching the ankle in one hand and the knee in the other. With a calm, surgical twist, a classic Aikido technique known as kote geishi applied to the leg, he flipped Damien through the air. The red belt champion landed flat on his back with a deafening thud that knocked the wind clean out of him. The crowd erupted. Phones were held high, recording every second of the unbelievable spectacle. Damien scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of fury and shame. His technique had failed. His power was useless. So he turned to his last resort, treachery. With a swift movement, he pulled a compact black object from the waistband of his shorts. With a flick of the wrist, it extended into a 2-foot-long carbon fiber baton. A collective gasp went through the crowd. "He's got a weapon," someone yelled. The referee started to move forward, but Seagal raised a hand, stopping him. "Let him," he said, his voice a chilling calm. Damien charged, swinging the baton in a vicious arc aimed at Seagal's ribs. The whistle of the weapon cutting through the air was terrifying, but never landed. With blinding speed, Seagal stepped forward, not away, catching Damien's wrist mid-swing. The bones in Damien's wrist ground together as Seagal applied a small, excruciatingly painful joint lock. Damien screamed, and the baton clattered to the floor. In the same fluid motion, Seagal spun, his other arm coming around. A spinning back fist connected squarely with Damien's jaw. The impact was clean, precise, and utterly final. Damien's eyes rolled back in his head, and he crumpled to the canvas, completely unconscious before he even hit the ground. Silence. A profound, reverent silence fell over the crucible. Steven Seagal stood over the unconscious form of Damien Rocco, his breathing slow and even, his hands relaxed at his sides. There was no celebration, no victory roar. There was only the quiet finality of a lesson delivered. The entire, brutal encounter had lasted less than 90 seconds. He had dismantled a feared champion without taking a single hit, without even breaking a sweat. He wasn't a fighter. He was a force of nature. Then, one person began to clap. A slow, hesitant sound that was quickly joined by another and another. Within seconds, the entire warehouse erupted in a thunderous, standing ovation. It wasn't just for the movie star. It was for the father, for the master, for the justice they had all just witnessed. Seagal ignored the applause. He walked to the edge of the ring where Leo was being carefully loaded onto a stretcher, his face pale, but his eyes wide with awe and pride. Seagal knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, his expression softening for the first time. "You were brave," he said, his voice low and for his son only. "You stood your ground. That's the heart of a warrior. I'm proud of you." Leo managed a weak smile, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't know you were here." "I always am," Seagal replied softly. The clips were already going viral before the ambulance carrying Leo had even left the parking lot. Raw, shaky phone footage of Seagal's silent entrance, his effortless takedown of a weapon-wielding thug, and the final decisive blow flooded social media. Titles exploded across YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Steven Seagal destroys fighter who broke his son's leg. Arrogant champion gets a reality check from a legend. And this isn't a movie. Seagal in real fight. The world was captivated by the story of a father defending his son, a master reminding the world what true martial arts looked like. Damian Rocco's reign of terror was over. His career, his reputation, all of it erased in a single night. Later that evening, back at their quiet home nestled in the hills outside the city, Seagal sat on the back porch, nursing a cup of herbal tea. The cool night air was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos from a few hours earlier. Leo was inside, his leg in a heavy cast, propped up on the couch. The screen door creaked open and Leo hobbled out on crutches, sitting down carefully in a chair beside his father. For a long moment, they sat in a comfortable silence, listening to the crickets. "They're calling you a ghost online," Leo finally said, a faint grin on his face. "Said you appeared from nowhere, laid down the law, and vanished before any reporters could show up." Seagal took a sip of his tea, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Good. Let them wonder." Leo's voice turned serious. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." "It's what fathers do," Seagal said, looking up at the stars. There was another peaceful silence, a moment of deep, unspoken understanding between them. Then Leo broke it, his voice filled with a new, steely determination. "When this heals," he said, patting his cast, "I want to train again. Harder. Smarter." Seagal turned his head to look at his son, a deep sense of pride in his eyes. He nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "Then I will teach you everything I know. So the next time you face a bully in the ring, you're the one who teaches the lesson." A smile spread across Leo's face. The torch had been passed, and across the martial arts world, a powerful message was now crystal clear. Never underestimate the quiet warrior, and never forget that a lion might just be watching from the shadows. This story wasn't just about a fight. It was a powerful lesson in humility. It reminds us that true strength isn't found in a flashy knockout or an arrogant boast. It's in the quiet confidence, the disciplined control, and the unwavering resolve to protect what you love. Damian's power was a wildfire, loud and destructive but quickly extinguished. Seagal's was like the ocean, calm on the surface, but with an unstoppable depth beneath. Have you ever witnessed someone whose arrogance was so out of control that they were blind to the consequences? What would you have thought if you were in that crowd, watching it all unfold in real time? And do you believe that true masters of any craft have a responsibility to step in when they see their art form being disrespected and used for harm? Let us know your thoughts down below. We value every perspective. If this story reminded you that real strength is often silent, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice and unexpected heroes. Share this with someone who believes that bullies eventually always meet their match. Your support helps us bring these incredible moments to light, and we read every single one of your comments. We truly appreciate you being here. More stories about legends teaching unforgettable lessons are waiting for you on the screen right now. Click on one of those next, and we'll see you tomorrow with another story that will leave you speechless.